Welcome to The Verdict 2023. Is Bob Joyce Elvis? I've been covering this topic for a number of years, and the top 2 points I always get from naysayers, shall we say, are number one, if he is Elvis, he's preaching the gospel. Why don't you just leave him alone and give him his privacy? The answer to that is when you begin a worldwide media ministry on YouTube in 2011, you forfeit your privacy. You become a public person. Your cover has been blown, so to speak. Your privacy has blown out the window. You know that going in. The other comment that I get very frequently is he doesn't look like he could be 88 years old, which is what Elvis would be if he were alive in 2023. My answer to that is, and we will talk about it in this video, is we have a video entitled Bob Joyce Close Up. Check that out. So it becomes a matter of opinion. Dick Van Dyke doesn't look 97 years old. So there's a lot to cover in this video, and I'm going to keep some videos up, put some up again, because I can't promise in this video here, in this update, I'll cover everything I said in the other videos. You'll be able to hear Pastor Bob Joyce in another video, Bob Joyce in Elvis Evidence in Rapid Fire. You'll be able to hear him singing, He Hideth My Soul. You tell me who that sounds like. So we'll cover a lot of ground. Pause it if you need to. Subscribe. Like if you do. And we will present new information in this video right at the beginning, and then I will close the video giving some information that I never have before. So let's get started. With all the media vying to have their voices heard, endless news channels, podcasts, thousands of podcasts maybe by now, YouTube videos, Rumble, and endless channels on various services, all the cable channels, Prime Video, Tubi. I mean, even Charlie Sheen's version of anger management has its own 24-hour channel that you can find. So obviously the world's greatest entertainment story of all time would be covered by now by the mainstream media. Nope. Oh, they may have made mention of it on Good Morning Flagstaff or Akron Today, but talk about the idea that Elvis may be a preacher in Arkansas, and you will be branded by many as crazy. A guy looking like the late moonshiner Popcorn Sutton, as I like to refer to him, will set you straight if he can find you. He's not Elvis. I know him. Hey, Billy Bob, come over here. Tell him, is Pastor Bob Elvis? No, see, I told you, he's not Elvis. Don't challenge him. He'll get meaner. Oh, if you want to put up pictures and church video inferring that Pastor Bob is Elvis, well, that's okay. You know the old saying, no such thing as bad publicity. However, if you tell the story in words, if you lay it out chronologically, well, that's a bridge too far. That's annoying. That's more impactful. Go on, get. Go on, get. I'm Jack Allen Willard. That's why in 2018, when I discovered this man who called himself Bob Joyce preaching in Benton, Arkansas, I was blown away, as so many people have been, and I wanted to know everything about him. I wanted to know. And as I began my investigation and began to develop sources, it occurred to me, I'm going to be speaking about a person here, a real live human being. And if this person is who I think he is, he may not be happy that I'm beginning this endeavor. So in the first video, I let it be known that if Pastor Bob was unhappy with my work, if he was unhappy with me covering the topic, that all he had to do was give me a video call, and I would take the video down and end the search right then. I had to have a video call because I had to be sure that I was talking to Pastor Bob Joyce. Well, I never got that call, that email to let me know he was interested in this. I spoke to someone in the inner circle a few years later, even giving them my personal phone number, and I never heard back. They were nice enough to interact with me, telling me that, nothing to see here. He's not Elvis. But I never heard from the pastor himself. And the evidence, the coincidences began to accumulate. I did a video, the 21 coincidences why Bob Joyce may be Elvis. Got over 40,000 hits. Eventually, I did The Verdict, part 1 of The Verdict, and that now has over 75,000 hits. All of a sudden, I had subscribers. I had covered other topics that got 3,000-4,000 hits from time to time, but it was clear to me pretty quick that it would be very difficult to come up with something that people enjoyed as much as the Pastor Bob Joyce topic. Just the way it is. So people encourage me all the time to do more. And all we're doing here, even though we are saying some new things, is we are updating the record. I guess I feel I have a responsibility as the storyteller to do that, to update the record. So that's what we are doing here, and we have been doing it since 2018, but there are plenty of other videos up here on plenty of other topics, and I hope you will check them out as well. I mean, Jiminy Crickets, wouldn't you know, in 2023, the year I am speaking to you in this video, another tanker of fuel was poured on the fire. Some of it sparked by the tragic, untimely death of Lisa Marie Presley. I mean, we had just seen her at the Golden Globe Awards. I wouldn't normally watch 5 minutes of the Golden Globe Awards these days, but my partner had it on, and I knew that I wanted to see Lisa Marie Presley as she came into view as they were doing the pre-show interviews, and Austin Butler, who did such a wonderful job portraying Elvis, was there being interviewed, and here comes Lisa Marie. But she seems kind of shaky. She seems kind of pale. apparently she went on a diet a crash diet, where she lost a lot of weight too fast so she would look her best that night. And she seemed unsteady. Unfortunately, nobody got her to the hospital right away, you know. And the next thing you know, we are finding out that she went into cardiac arrest. That's just something that just devastates you. Because that night we were reminded how much we loved Lisa Marie Presley. I never really listened to her albums or CDs, but I had seen her perform live on various shows, and I knew that she had real talent and a great voice. So it was terrible. It's always terrible when someone dies early before they get to enjoy their full life. And so there was tragedy. Early in her career, a number of years before her untimely passing, she did a video tribute to her father, Elvis Presley. In a recording studio, she sang the song, "No One Stands Alone." No one stands alone. The video would bring in Elvis himself, perhaps from the early 70s, singing that very song. And then there was a split screen, a duet. Elvis and his daughter, Lisa Marie. Very, very beautiful. Well, a few days later, at the Household of Faith Sanctuary, first of all, the church went out of their way to let you know that Pastor Bob Joyce would be preaching that Sunday. It was the very Sunday that a public memorial would be held at Graceland, attended by Priscilla Presley, Austin Butler, and many others. But Pastor Bob was going to preach opposite that memorial. And everybody thought, well, if he were Elvis, he wouldn't do that. He wouldn't do that. But there he was, as the church promised. And even though there was a man that helped Priscilla up or down the stairs that had white hair and a beard, everyone said, well, there he is. There's Bob Joyce. I don't believe so. He was in Benton at the same time. He was in Benton. Any man with white hair at that memorial was suspect of being Bob Joyce, even though he was a number of miles down the road. So they have a song service. Usually there's about 5 or 6 songs, and it would become a very memorable song service. In that song service, taking the lead, Pastor Bob Joyce sang the song, "No One Stands Alone." The odds of him picking that song coincidentally, or the praise team picking it for him, as was told to me, coincidentally, would be like 1,000,000 to 1. First, we have to realize "No One Stands Alone" is not a traditional praise song. It's not something that would be normally used during praise time. That would be maybe during the offering, someone would sing that song. Maybe Pastor Bob would sing that song. It's not something that they would normally include in the half a dozen praise songs. But Pastor Bob Joyce sang that song the Sunday after the death of Lisa Marie Presley, and he gave it all he had. He gave it all he had. During the service, there are other oddities. There are other strange things. After singing one of the songs, Pastor Bob mutters something into the microphone. He's sitting a little back from the microphone, then he comes closer. And many of you think he muttered, "I love you, Yisa. I love you, Yisa." Well, Yisa was the nickname Elvis had for Lisa Marie. It is rumored that he hardly ever called her Lisa Marie. Only when he was a little mad at her would he do that. Lisa Marie. Usually he called her Yisa, according to many people. Now, there was a song that was supposed to close out the praise time. And Pastor Bob pushes the mic back and nods to the praise team that that's it. But the congregation is so worked up and emotional. Pastor Bob is noticing this, and as any recording artist doing a live concert would notice, or pastor would notice, they are not ready to stop. There's a flow going here. So he brings the mic closer and says, "Hallelujah." And then, as if he is channeling Elvis Presley, he shakes a little bit like Elvis would do and says something like, "Come on, oh baby." And then he does another song. And he's sounding very much like Elvis Presley as he does it. In a more recent service, in the winter of 2023, they have a church luncheon, reportedly, and then they go into the sanctuary for a little song service. And Pastor Bob is sitting at the piano, and he looks at the congregation, and he says, "This is for my wife." And he begins singing, "Can't Help Falling in Love with You." I was told by someone I was interacting with who goes to Household of Faith and is not happy with my videos that he told Pastor Bob personally, better not do that song. Better not do that song. You know about those conspiracy theorists, as they like to call people like me. I was called that by the Daily Star in the UK. That's over something different that we'll hopefully remember to say. If I forget, it's in the Verdict #1 video. But you don't tell Pastor Bob what he's going to do. And it's not a coincidence that he's saying no one stands alone. Nobody believes that. No one. I mean, of all the songs, the thousands and thousands of songs he could have done, he sings with all his heart a song that Lisa Marie used as a tribute to him. We're not stupid. We're not stupid. And so he sang as he wanted to do, "Can't Help Falling in Love for You," for his wife, Willena Joyce. That's a complicated topic too. it's been pointed out that we never see Willina in any of these videos. The camera never pans to her. We just hear about her being there, and there are pictures. There are pictures from time to time, and people tell me that they have seen her there. Well, when he sang "Can't Help Falling in Love with You," which was the signature closing song for Elvis Presley at every concert, and especially in the later years it was, he sounds just like the record. He sounds just like Elvis Presley. Many have said that's one of the top three, there it is moments for you. And I understand that. Pastor Bob has always had a lot of fun with the perception, the Elvis perception. He can't help himself. Sugar pie, honey bunch, I just can't help myself. He finds himself doing that. He often drops what seems like somewhat of a put on Pastor Bob Joyce voice. I'm Bob Joyce. I'm Bob Joyce. He often, in the course of a sermon or during the praise, seems to push that aside and talk in a different way, which is very reminiscent of exactly how Elvis Presley took. And he likes to have fun sometimes with the perception. Somebody hands him a tissue when they think he needs it as he's preaching, and he says, "Thank you very much." And he laughs, and everybody laughs, like they're all in on the joke. They all know what's going on here. And he will mention Elvis from time to time. Forget about Elvis. I want to know Jesus. I want to know Jesus, he'll say. He will say, I used to dance with my hips. I used to dance with my hips, but I'm getting too old. So now I dance with my shoulders. Now I dance with my shoulders. But when the church, before they built the new sanctuary, which Pastor Bob actually helped build, if you can believe that, he is both a carpenter and electrician, it seems. He's learned the craft of being an electrician. He felt it necessary when they were in the strip mall before the new sanctuary was open in Benton, Arkansas, to make it clear that he was Pastor Bob Joyce and that he had always been Pastor Bob Joyce. People say this one and that one didn't mention Elvis at this time. I can't just be who I am, which is a new creature in Christ, Bob Joyce. The old man has passed away. I'm adding the scriptures that he may use, The old man has passed away. The old man is dead. I can't just be that. I got to be somebody else. But this is my ordained role here. This is what I want to do. But the denial was strong enough that I thought, gee, I have a video up here. Well, maybe Bob Joyce isn't Elvis. And I don't say I believe that, but I wanted to cover that base because the reality is that a lot of people have to cover up for him. Now, of course, the Memphis Mafia, of course, immediate family would go along with the program, go along with the plan for Bob Joyce to emerge, say, around 2010 as a man of the cloth, preaching the word and singing. Of course they would. But then this would lead to a whole bunch of other people that would be expected to say something that they knew wasn't really true. When I became born again, I didn't become David Crosby, for example. I'm still Jack Allen Willard. But the Lord sometimes does give someone a new name. Saul became Paul, the Apostle Paul, in the scripture. But there's just been always these things when John Cook was the producer, tech guy, and now when Stacy is doing a fine job. There's always been these signs coming from Pastor Bob Joyce. Early on, he was singing a song. He finished, and someone yelled out, "Thank you, Elvis. Thank you, Elvis." He looked up, and I made note of that in a video. You're going to notice that, right? And it seems like the video was quickly taken down, edited, so as soon as he finished that song, the tape was edited, and we never heard that man's voice. Man comes to the church dressed just like Rod Stewart in an all-gold suit. An all-gold suit, spiky hair and everything, right in the front row, and he's looking at Pastor Bob like, wow, I can't believe where I am right now and who this is. And Pastor Bob waited to the appropriate time after prayer as the service was closing, and he said, I'm going to remember you. I had a gold jacket once, and in 1957, really more than once, Elvis did an entire concert with black pants and a beautiful gold jacket on. Yes, he had a gold jacket once. He did. Many seem to think that the legendary pianist Glenn Hardin, who was often Elvis's piano man during the concert tours of the 70s, they seem to think that he is in the band at Household of Faith. But I think most times they are thinking of, I think the man's name is Joe Murphy, and he plays bass, and he looks like Glenn Hardin, except when I saw him, he had bib overalls on, you know? Glenn Hardin is a millionaire. He wrote hit records. He wrote Count Me In for Gary Lewis and the Playboys. I've always loved that song. He wrote for the late, great John Denver and many others. Yet you can find a video online where we appear to be hearing Elvis singing, or is it Pastor Bob Joyce? But we never get to see him because he's like a silhouette in the corner, and the camera is on Glenn as he's playing the piano, and Bob Joyce, perhaps Bob Joyce or Elvis Presley, or a great imitator, if you want to say that, cover all bases, is singing the song. And Glenn is fantastic. Got a cigarette in his mouth, though. Shouldn't be smoking at that age, Glenn. And then as the song ends, the camera starts to pan to where the singer is, and the video stops. Just teasing us, just teasing us. We're not going to get to see the singer. We're not going to get to see the singer. I'm not saying Glenn Hardin has never been to Household of Faith. I'm just saying he doesn't play in the Household of Faith praise band. But other people go there. Other people go there. For example, there is Gene Ho. Gene Ho is a world-renowned photographer. He was President Trump's campaign photographer beginning in 2015. And then when he became president, when he was elected president in 2016, he stayed on for a while as the campaign photographer. But he photographs a lot of famous people. A lot of famous people. And let's take a look at him. Let's take a look at him. You have to ask the question. Try to get back to that. You have to ask the question, why would Gene Ho be going to a church that now the new sanctuary supposedly seats about 125 people, and now they have to have an overflow room. But that's no good, because if you're coming from hundreds of miles away, or if you're coming from another country, you want to see, you want to be in the sanctuary and worship and be there as Pastor Bob Joyce is singing and preaching. He has often said that if you're coming here for any other reason than to worship the Lord Jesus, you're coming for the wrong reason. And that's the right thing to say, and I agree. I absolutely agree. But here we have Pastor Bob Joyce with Gene Ho. With Gene Ho. Here is Gene Ho with a man we all know, because especially if you watch, say, Fox News, you see him all the time. Gene Ho with Mike Lindell, who, of course, is a conservative who speaks at rallies and what have you that are supportive of President Trump. He believed there was election fraud and what have you, and he is not on CNN. They won't even put his commercials on CNN. But I think he's a fine man. I'm not saying everything all his conclusions I would agree with, but there's Gene Ho. And Gene Ho decided that he would revise the magazine that was the brainchild, the baby of, I believe, the late John F. Kennedy Jr. John F. Kennedy Jr., the magazine known as George magazine. And here's an issue that was from early spring 2023. You can still get this. You can still order this, with President Trump on the cover. George magazine. And wouldn't you know, listed on the cover by the left hand of President Trump is a spiritual article from Pastor Bob Joyce. Not too many preachers from a little church in Arkansas get to have an article, very good article, in a national magazine. But there it is. We talk about moments when people had the, oh my goodness, it is him moment. You know, there's a number of them. There's a number of them. Pastor Bob Joyce has either a son or a stepson or whatever you would want to call him, Matt Joyce, who just happens to be, of all things, an Elvis impersonator, and a pretty good one. I heard more recent stuff, and he was sounding very much like Elvis. Very good job. And he has a gig, I guess the place in Benton, the nightclub is called Denton's in Benton. And there's a lot of people there, and they all have cameras, and they're taking pictures, and they're taking video, especially because Matt has invited Daddy up to sing. He wants Daddy to sing. So there's Pastor Bob Joyce sitting there, and Matt wants to do American Trilogy. You can see this video right here on YouTube, for example. And Bob doesn't want to do it. He's very nervous. He's playing with his ear, itching his ear, which they say Elvis used to do an awful lot. And he doesn't want to, but he keeps trying to toss it back to Matt. He's so nervous he's forgetting some of the words. But, you know, the song is building to a crescendo. Only occasionally in Household of Faith does Pastor Bob Joyce go to full voice. If he sang a song like How Great Thou Art, for example, he would. But the finale of American Trilogy requires the singer to go to full voice. And although he keeps trying to get Matt to do it, it is clear that Matt is not having that. And finally, Bob decides to do it. And this is going to be a defining moment because he's going to go to full voice. Many imitators do a wonderful job, but they never get it exactly. Never exactly. So when Bob is required to go to his highest range at the end of the song to close out American Trilogy, many of you have told me that there was no doubt in your mind they were watching and listening to Elvis Presley. And all the people, there was a buzz in the crowd. Now, I have to say that, as I have said in all my videos, that I speak of possibilities here. I speak of possibilities. I could be wrong. We are just telling a story. We are just telling a story. And even though I've been telling it since 2018, I have an audience that will say, yeah, I knew that already, and the others will poo-poo it. There are Elvis protectors who feel it's their life's mission. Some are possibly sent to do it, and others just do it on their own. They feel that they have to press the James Bond car fog machine and obscure your vision. Nothing to see here. Nothing to see here. It can all be explained away. It can be all be explained away. And by the way, he's not 88 years old. Well, we even covered that part because we have a video up posing the question, could Bob Joyce be Elvis's son? In other words, when Elvis Presley was 18, if he had a love child with some woman, a male love child, could that be the man we see in Benton, Arkansas? Most of you don't think that. The people who are in the Bob Joyce is Elvis club certainly don't think that. One of the things that happens at Household of Faith, it happened when they were in the strip mall, I don't know about when they were in the other church in the beginning, is people come because they've seen him on YouTube and they want to come. And they often come bearing gifts. Somebody I was corresponding with brought him a beautiful guitar. It was the same guitar from the movie Blue Hawaii. And I'm told that when he opened up the box, his eyes just lit up. His eyes just lit up. I was told that, there are Sunday night jam sessions sometimes, not every week. And they're closed to the public. It's just for musicians, And they may sing some secular songs. They have sung Crying in the Chapel, for example. Somebody looked at it after the service. They were either taking a break in the fellowship hall or the service was done. They just quickly looked at a music sheet, and it was a new song, supposedly, that Bob was working on. And up in the left-hand corner, I was told by this source, totally unverifiable, that up in the left-hand corner were the initials EAP. EAP. There's been all these stories. Certainly the George Klein funeral, which we have covered in the videos from a funeral service in Memphis, Tennessee. George Klein being the Memphis disc jockey that Elvis grew very fond of. He would refer to him as his best friend. And one time, George Klein, who was on the big AM station playing Elvis Presley and other artists, got a call from someone that most people called E. Since he was in the inner circle, he referred to him as E. And E was on the phone saying, George, I'm down here at the Cadillac dealership, and I just got to ask you a question. Could you come down here? Could you come down here? Of course, he says, yeah, E, sure, I'll come down. I'll come down. And when he did, Elvis Presley handed him the keys to a beautiful Cadillac, I believe, with a white interior, one of those classic cars when we used to know how to make beautiful cars here in America, and you didn't have to have $500,000 to get a cool car, And he said, that's for you, buddy. That's for you, buddy. Because that's the kind of man Elvis was. Very generous to those that he considered to be like family to him, and sometimes to fans as well. That's just what he did. Well, eventually, Sirius XM came along. They're going to have an Elvis channel, and who's going to be the head of it? Of course, they want George Klein, so he makes the jump to Sirius XM. The studio's right across from Graceland, and there he is every day. He's got 1,000 stories to tell. But eventually, at an old age, he passes away, and now Pastor Bob has been preaching in Benton, Arkansas, in the strip mall for quite some time now. And so the big question is, will Bob Joyce go to George Klein's funeral? And it's going to be held in a big auditorium. I don't know if it was the Jewish Temple or if they rented a hall. I suspect they rented a hall because it looked like maybe 500 people, a lot of people in attendance. And Priscilla Presley was there. Well, sitting, this was on the left side of the sanctuary, it would be stage right, was a man that looked very much, he had this silver hair, looked very much like Bob Joyce. Bob Joyce. And next to him appeared to be someone who looked very much like the back head of Matt Joyce. Now, he was crouching down. People say, well, that wasn't the shape of his head. One person said this. And that's not the shape of Matt's head, so your theory is wrong. Anyway, the Daily Star in the UK picked that up. They saw my video. They contacted me and said, can we run your story? We'll give you credit. We'll put a piece of your video on our website and all that. And I said, sure, fine. And they actually ran the story twice, and the video, the last I checked, was still up on their website calling me a conspiracy theorist. But they like this topic, and they have covered it before, and they're very interested in it. So Judy Smith was the one sitting in the pew who got, using her own camera, a better shot of who we think may be Bob Joyce and Matt Joyce. Sitting behind, but not directly behind, further down in the row is Priscilla Presley, and the rabbi wants her to come up and speak. He wants her to come up and speak. She's shy and reluctant, but she knows she has to do it, so she does, and she says some very nice things because she cared about George too. She comes down, and as she does, out of 500 people in the room, she puts her right hand on the shoulder of the man that we think may be Pastor Bob Joyce. I speak of possibilities here. Quite a coinky-dink, huh? Quite a coinky-dink. Now, before we tell you something, a little more information that I've shared with you that I've never shared before, and it concerns the private funeral service for Lisa Marie Presley. I'm just going to go very quickly now over some of the early stuff, and I'm going to say something I haven't said before about this, so check it out. And but if you want more detail, check out The Verdict #1 or the 21 Coincidences Why Bob Joyce May Be Elvis, for example. Early on, there was a man named Phil Asian who was an investigative reporter, and he was commissioned to do a study by the government, I believe, um, exploring the fact that Elvis Presley did not fake his death. Now, when I say the government, I don't mean necessarily the federal government, you know. But anyway, someone commissioned him. It was a paid study to explore the topic: did Elvis fake his death? Did he fake his death? And he got some of his fellow reporters to help him, and he came up with a rather long report. Hard to see the whole report online anymore. I was able to see a piece of it, but I wasn't able to see the whole thing. And he came up with a lot of things, you know. The fact that so many people didn't think that that was Elvis Presley in the coffin. It looked like a younger Elvis. It looked like someone that was thinner and what have you. And there seemed to be sounds coming from under this, what would turn out to be a very heavy coffin, so heavy that the pallbearers almost dropped it. It sounded like an air conditioning unit, because say it was a wax dummy, the sun beating down could cause the wax to sweat. So they were trying to stop that. They were trying to stop that. And Tanya Tucker, supposedly, this is one was in the Phil Aitchison report, that she viewed the body and then walked over to Vernon Presley and said, Vernon, that's not Elvis. Where is he? Oh, he said, oh, he's upstairs. He's upstairs. We had to show the fans something. The story that Phil talked about was they had gone to the Atlanta Wax Museum, the Memphis Mafia, and Vernon prior to the death of Elvis Presley. And they bought Elvis. They said, we're going to work on this. You won't believe what we're going to do with it. That's supposedly the quote, totally unverifiable, but just an amazing story. Just an amazing story. Tragedy happened on the viewing line when a drunk driver broke through the barricade and killed a couple of fans. And it was said that Elvis Presley, who was very much alive, was horrified about all this and horrified at the excruciating pain he saw on his fans' faces, and he was just going to say, "Whoa, I'm going to stop this. I'm going to stop this. I just can't go through with this." See, there were a lot of reasons for Elvis Presley to want to fake his death. He was absolutely in very ill health and wasn't far from death. He needed to go to a facility where he would be made well in mind, body, and spirit. He was very overweight. He had all kinds of problems, including constipation problems and all those issues, yes. But he was, addicted to prescription drugs. Thanks to Dr. Nikopopoulos, he was addicted to injectable pain subscription drugs. The karate had really done a number on him, and he would do it in his acts sometimes and what have you. He loved to do the karate. Supposedly he broke one or two pinkies, and those who deal with the scars, the veins, the hands, and what have you of Bob Joyce love to talk about the fact that Pastor Bob has a broken pinky. Some say two broken pinkies. I've never looked into that. Great people like JJB that you can see on TikTok, they do that. They do it better than me. I've never even looked at his hand to see if the pinky looked broken. It's just not my thing, okay? It's just not my thing, but people swear to that, and that's fine, that's fine. So he had a lot of pain issues, and they had to keep increasing the dosages, and so he had to go somewhere and get well. He was a prisoner at Graceland at this point, Where could he go? Occasionally they would rent a theater at midnight, and he would go see a movie, then they they had a theater in Graceland and what have you, but he needed a change of pace, and God was perhaps working on his heart for a future assignment, a future assignment. But also, during his time in Las Vegas, although he was never in the mafia, a lot of mafia types would come and they all wanted to meet Elvis and have a few drinks after the show, and loose lips sink ships. And supposedly Elvis heard some things he probably shouldn't have heard. And there was one guy in particular that they wanted to get. And so the government came to Elvis and asked if he would testify against him. That's one of the stories. And it's a frequent story. It's a frequent story because he was really already a federal agent, Elvis Presley, even if it was honorary. President Nixon had given him the badge as a special agent. It is rumored that in Memphis, Tennessee, he had some police credentials. He literally pulled people over, him in the Memphis Mafia, for speeding. He didn't give him a ticket, but he warned the shocked driver who'd just been pulled over by a flashing blue light atop a blue Mercedes that we have laws in this county and we'd like to see them kept. We'd like to see them kept. So there's all that. Did he testify? Did he have to go into the witness protection program, or just since he was a federal agent? People that say you can't do that, you can't fake your death, it's illegal, you don't know what you're talking about when you say that. It was all orchestrated by the government. So just like we're seeing in today's politics, it seems like you can just do about anything. That's apparently what many people feel is true. Gail Brewer talked about that in her book about questioning the death of Elvis Presley, and Phil Aitchison said in his report that eventually a green military helicopter picked Elvis up in the back of Graceland and took him to a private plane at the airport, and that he left the country at that point, possibly to Argentina, and spent months away. People say he would never leave Lisa Marie. He would never leave her. He didn't leave forever. He left to get well, 3-4 months, whatever it was. And when he came back to the States, that's when we started hearing about these Elvis sightings. Someone taking a picture of him, open door, just a glass door, and Elvis is sitting on the couch. And there's that picture which Bill Bixby showed. And yes, Bill Bixby, who was just a wonderful actor, wasn't he? If you remember him, if you're old enough to remember him, he became a television icon in a number of series like The Courtship of Eddie's Father, My Favorite Martian, Steam Bath, and a few other things. But before that, he did some movies. And I didn't realize this till it was pointed out to me that Bill Bixby was in 2 Elvis Presley movies. He was in Clambake from 1967 and Speedway in 1968. Bill Bixby was a friend of Elvis. I believe he was handpicked by the lead of the Memphis Mafia to host this special. And there was more than one. And he did such a wonderful job. Bill Bixby had a real knack for being smooth. He should have been the next Dick Cavett of his time, because everything this man did was great. He was just such a wonderful man and a professional through and through. So he interviewed Gail Brewer Giorgio. He interviewed Johnny Hara. Many thought he was the best Elvis impersonator of all times, but definitely not Elvis, no more than Orion was. There are pictures of Orion. It wasn't him. Did Elvis possibly do some songs on an Orion album? That's possible. But no, he wasn't Orion, and he wasn't Johnny Hara, Elvis Presley. But yeah, there they were. So that is the feeling that Bill Bixby was handpicked because they had a method to their madness. In the first special, pretty hard evidence, and watch it. It's available right here on YouTube. Watch all of them. And you will see early on, he's coming up with some really strong reasons. They talk about the misspelling on the grave. They talk about everything, you know. Aaron, two R's on the gravestone. It was Aron. There were many life insurance policies, but the big ones were never cashed in. Some of the small ones, just prior to the death of Elvis Presley, were cashed in, though. People argue about that. You know, people argue about that. And on the inventory list, so much was lacking. Pictures, you know, that the estate was not including things like pictures of Elvis's mom and pictures of Lisa Marie. It's like somebody wanted to keep those pictures. They weren't going to put them in the estate. You know, there's so much of that. So in the first part of the Bill Bixby expose, the first special, he's building a strong case and saying, wow, wow. And it got incredible ratings. In the latter part of the special, Part two, the Memphis Mafia is taking the lead, and they're explaining away. A lot of the evidence, and finally, at the end of the study of the television special in part 2 or 3, Bill Bixby says at the very end, he says, I have tried to keep an open mind. I've looked at all the information, and I feel that Elvis passed away in 1977. Take that for what it's worth. Did he do his job? Was that the way it was supposed to go all along? The man who was in several Elvis movies? That's up for you to decide. I speak of possibilities. I could be wrong. So there's a lot of that, you know? There's a lot of that. And we've enjoyed talking about the topic. I am trying to move on to a different topic. I'm going to conclude with some information that I have never talked about before in this kind of detail. But I'm not going to show the information because I promised I wouldn't. I wouldn't. As I said, there was a public memorial for Lisa Marie on January 21st, and it seems like Bob Joyce was paying tribute to Lisa Marie at Household of Faith as that service was going on. But there was also a private service, a private funeral. TMZ reported that this was going to happen. They had thought Lisa Marie had been buried after the public memorial, and they said, no, she hasn't been. There's going to be a private funeral, and this is for family and close friends, and they would be required to sign an NDA, a non-disclosure agreement. You cannot talk about what you see here. Very telling. Also very telling is the fact that after they did this story, to my knowledge, Harry Levin never mentioned it again. They said that, and that was it. No follow-up, no cameras outside the gate to see who's coming in. Nothing like that we are aware of. And that is just plain weird. So, one of my sources sent me the actual service card. Now, this could be faked. The whole thing could be faked. Anyone can make a very nice professional-looking order of service card for the funeral, perhaps January 28th, 11 a.m., a Saturday, not a Sunday, a Saturday at Graceland. But they sent me the information, and I thought about it, and I thought, I'm not going to put this up. At that time, it was just, too early, too sensitive. And I'm not putting it up now, but I will tell you what was on some of it. The musical prelude at this private funeral was sung by Austin Butler. The processional clergy and family. Well, I should first tell you this. At the top of the service card, it said Graceland Memorial, Elvis Presley Boulevard, Saturday, January 28th. Bob Joyce, pastor, officiating. Old Testament scripture reading, Pastor Bob Joyce. New Testament, Minister Colt Harold. Prayer, Bob Joyce. Music tribute, looks like Kelly Marlin. Song, Tom Presley. The eulogy, Pastor Bob Joyce. Recessional, song, Austin Butler. Interment at the Graceland Memorial, right there on the grounds of Graceland, Elvis Presley Boulevard. Never shared that much of it before. Is it fake? You see, when I did the 21 coincidences video, you get to the point where you say there are just too many coincidences, so that they are not really coincidences at all. It's the flowing of a story. It's the flowing of a story. And so that's what we've done here at the Virtual Church of the Disillusioned. And here on The Verdict 2023 is Bob Joyce Elvis. I'm still not sure. But I, in my lifetime, have never seen these many coincidences, similarities come together. Even if everything we say is a misconception and wrong, it is still an incredible story. I've never seen anything else like it in my lifetime, and someday this will be a movie. It is said that Pastor Bob Joyce is writing a book, but it will not come out until his passing. Whether that's true, we don't know that either, but it has been said. All I can say is when you listen to Pastor Bob Joyce CDs or listen to his music on Spotify, whatever, many times, not always, he sounds identical to Elvis Presley, and that some of the songs appear to be early Elvis. When you do a gospel album, not all the songs that you recorded make the album. Some end up on the cutting room floor. Perhaps that is the story with He Hideth My Soul, for example. My personal email is jackthefairguy@gmail.com. Jack the F-A-I-R guy @gmail.com. I feel that I would still extend an invitation to Pastor Bob to video call me if he's unhappy with my work. Donald Stone and Justin Case and a plethora of other guys are putting up endless picture videos. JJB, great work that's on TikTok, all over the place. But I'm the storyteller, the guy who puts his face in there. One of the things we talked about as we close down now, just a minute or two left, was the two Bob Joyce theory, that there was Robert Wayne Joyce, who was married to Willena in the state of Texas. That is this guy here with the almost looks like black hair, and a younger Willena Joyce. And the next is a picture of Willena with the current pastor of Household of Faith, Bob Joyce. I don't believe the man with the dark hair, who is said to be the biological father of Matthew and Sabrina Joyce, morphed in to a guy who looks exactly like Elvis Presley, sings like Elvis Presley. I don't believe that to be true, but I could be wrong. Even at Sabrina's wedding, As I look into that man's eyes, would be an older Robert Wayne Joyce now. It just doesn't seem to line up. And there are other videos, and there are other pictures of perhaps an older Robert Wayne Joyce who would be, by all accounts, about 70 years old as I speak to you now. It seems to me to possibly be a different guy. And then we have, in this incredible story, the time when Elvis was 23 in the army in Germany, and he runs into this woman right here. And many people feel that is a young Willena Joyce. Perhaps her parents were in the military at that time, and that's where she got to meet soldier Elvis Presley. It wasn't just like one time. There are many, many sightings of them together. Many sightings of them together. They appear to have been a couple for a while. Of course, he would go back to the States and Priscilla would win out. But did they stay in touch? And then when he felt the call to preach, did she help him? Did she eventually marry him? What happened to Robert Wayne Joyce? I know none of these things. It's just a theory. It's just a theory. Many tried to say, oh, it's Sigrid Schultz that was with him, but that's Sigrid, who looks nothing like Willena. And in one of our videos, thanks to JJB, is a picture of Soldier Presley with Willena right next to him, and Sigrid Schultz is also in the same picture. Bob Joyce up close. Could he be 88 years old? Could he be 88 years old? You be the judge. Is Bob married to Willena now? I believe so. I believe so. I think there they are after church, perhaps, at a restaurant maybe like Applebee's. There they are together. And there they are right there. So that's our video, The Verdict 2023. I'm Jack Allen Willard. And again, my email, jackthefairguy@gmail.com. Check out our other videos. Please subscribe and like. God bless you.